fixing your car. Like, you're at a race, you're competing, you've got a problem, the car doesn't run. How do you go through troubleshooting it to make it run again, right? Like, not all of us are great mechanics. I was a horrible mechanic. I learned from my friends. And if you have a problem and you want to keep racing, there's a couple of things you can do. So like, you know, this isn't for guys who are mechanics, right? This isn't for guys who know their engines. If you know to rebuild an engine, dude, just turn this off. This is for guys who haven't really figured out why an engine runs. They know they put gas in it, they know they light it on fire, and they know they make power. But no, this is for all of us just sort of starting out with cars. So let's talk about engines. They're basically a giant air pump, right? So the more air you can pump through this engine, the more power it's going to make. But when you think about making the motor run, everything is about pumping air through it and then filling it with gas and then lighting it on fire at the right time. It's why you always hear air, fuel, spark. So we're going to go through those three things. Air is almost a given. The motor's almost always going to suck air. If it doesn't suck air, just don't even bother. It means you've lost rings, you've broken a piston, you've got no way to draw air into the engine, or you've snapped a throttle cable. So forget about air. When your car doesn't run in an event, immediately go to fuel, all right? Mostly because fuel is the easiest to solve. Spark will generally deal with computers and sensors and things you might not be able to test or jump out of the way at the event. The key to this whole process is to block off paths as rapidly as possible. So like, car gets air, cool, go to fuel. You quickly want to determine if you're getting fuel. If you're getting fuel, quickly want to move to spark. You don't have a lot of time. So generally speaking with fuel, usually if the pump runs, you're gonna be okay there and you can then move to spark. Yeah, there are times where your fuel pressure regulator goes and you don't build up pressure in the rail. Yeah, there's times where your ECU is not on, it's not firing the actual injectors themselves. But for the most part, if your car was running and now it's not running, odds are, if it's a fuel issue, it's your fuel pump. So you need to figure out where your pump is in your car. If it's in the tank, external, most are in tank. BMW sometimes had in tanks and externals. So yeah, some of this is car specific, but you want to figure out where your pump is and listen for the noise. So older BMWs, when you turn the key on, you hear the pump whir to life. Whoa, and then it just stops as it kind of like builds pressure. The newer pumps, like my 91 318, they actually turn the pump on when the car is cranking and when the engine's running. So determining when the pump comes on, you need to listen for the damn thing. If you can't hear it, immediately jump the relay. So the way these pumps work, the way anything works in a car is you've got a fuse to run power through it, and then you've got a relay because the switch that turns it on isn't strong enough to handle the current, so you use a relay, right? It's basically just a magnetic switch that handles more power. So first thing you do is grab the relay. I mean, check the fuse, dude. If you got a blown fuse, you always check the fuse box first. Take a quick peek. Fuse box has all its fuses. Move to the relay. You can play games. You can listen for the relay clicking. Do whatever you want. You can also just jump power across the relay. Flip the relay over. There's a diagram on the back. You'll see where there's power coming in. You'll see the big breaker switch. It'll have the contact thing in the drawing. You need to close that gap. You do that by providing power. It's like 24 to 86 or something on most Bosch relays, and 86 is power. I can't remember. When I take a look at it, it clicks back. I'm not that good, but jump the power lead. So like if you look at my rally cars, there's a jumper wire with two bladed terminals underneath the cushion on the driver's seat. Like if we have an electrical problem, I pull that thing out and I jump the relay immediately. So if the pump goes bad, it's either sucked a rock, it's ran out of juice, or the relay's gone bad. So the first thing you do is hit the relay, jump it. Pump still doesn't come to life, car still doesn't start, you might have a bad pump. I mentioned other weird scenarios. Yeah, this won't help you at a race, but I once had a pump that was working, everything was working, but the little rubber connector between the pump and the external mounting of the pump broke off. So the pump was producing pressure just in the tank. It wasn't actually hitting the lines, which is really bizarre. So when you think you've got the pump running, you can actually crack the fuel line at the pressure rail and see if pressure comes out. If it weeps out, you don't have pressure. You've got something wrong. You got a weak pump, you got a bad pressure regulator, you're out of gas. But it's not a bad idea just to check the fuel rail to see if there's gas in it, right? So assuming you've jumped the pump and you now have gas at the fuel rail, you're on to spark, which is typically the reason why most cars don't run. Spark is governed by the computer. Spark is governed by all the sensors. The timing of the spark is critical. It's not like gas where fuel, you just dump it into the cylinder. It sucks it in, it comes in, it grabs the gas, it compresses it, and boom, right? The timing of it's pretty important. And I guess I take that back. The fuel mixture is pretty critical too, but I put all that under spark. So I look at it as we got air, then you got fuel. These are kind of mechanical processes. Yeah, the fuel needs to be metered and measured, but I put that all in with spark. Spark to me is everything related to the ECU of the car. Typically, it's good to find out if you're making any spark. So what we'll do is we'll pull a plug real quick if we can, or if we have a spare plug in the toolbox, put it into the plug wire, ground the plug on the car, and crank it. You should be able to see and hear the electricity jumping the spark plug gap. It needs to be a lot. If it looks weak, if it's wimpy, then maybe you don't have enough power going to it. Maybe your coil's bad somehow, but it'd be weird that all your coils would be bad. So keep in mind, that's the other thing, guys. Like if a car just won't run, like an entire system had to go bad. Not just one coil pack, not just one spark plug, not just one wire. Like a system component went down. So if you look at fuel injection, there's only a couple of things that really regulate it, right? You've got your crank timing, you've got your cam timing, you've got a throttle position switch, you've got your mass airflow meter, the thing in the front that measures all the air coming in. So the car's got to know how much air is coming in, and then it matches it with fuel, and then it hits the spark at the exact right time. So if you're letting more air in than this device realizes, then the car is going to put in way too less gas. So if it thinks it's getting this much air, but you're getting this much air, it's going to give you fuel for this, and it's not going to run. And that is a vacuum leak. So any time between that metering device and where the air actually goes into the cylinder wall, if there's a gap, a leak, a crack, anything, it will suck air through that crack, and it'll pull more air through that gap, enough to offset, enough to meter the car wrong. Look at it this way. When you're full throttle and the throttle plate's wide open, a lot of air is coming in. When you're cracked at like 1/3 throttle, well, what happens if you have a big gap on the other side of the throttle plate? It's effectively running full throttle when you're at 1/3 throttle, except you're 1/3 throttle, so the car's giving you fuel for 1/3 throttle, but it's getting air for full throttle. You have a mismatch. So that's typically reasons why cars won't start or won't run is a vacuum leak. If it's mild, you'll get like a lopey sound, like a Harley Davidson at idle, as it lets air in and then corrects it, and lets too much air in, realizes it's too lean, and then corrects it, and it hunts. It'll rev. It won't sound like a cam. It'll sound like the way a car, like, it hunts, but whatever. It's got that. It's not cam related. That could be like a vacuum leak. So let's go back to testing this stuff. If you don't have spark, man, you've got some issues, right? Again, check the fuse and check the relay that powers the DME or the ECU or the computer. The computer turns on with a relay. Typically, like the ignition relay, the fuel pump relay, the DME relay are all right together in a nice little like block on the wiring harness, or at least they are in a lot of the cars I play with. So you want all those to click. Again, jump the ECU relay. If that's all, you're not getting power to that, then you got to check your grounds, your ignition, your other issues. Assuming that relay is triggering and you're powering up the computer, then run to the major sensors. Check the crank sensor, check the cam sensor. Pull the cam sensor out. If you've got something like mildly broken your engine, I saw it at a Lemons race with the punk racers. Like they had a little piece of metal hit their cam sensor, and it was just enough to throw off the frequency of the signal going back to the ECU that it would misfire and turn off. So pull your sensors out, clean them, check them real quick, check the wiring, look for connections is bad, like, whatever. Your mass airflow meter, pull that thing out and clean it. They make mass airflow cleaner, it leaves no residue. If you're in a bind, you can use brake cleaner. Take a look at the little metal filament inside the tube. If it's got grease on it, if it's got dust on it, that's probably your problem. You can clean them and make them work again for an event. We did it at WRC Mexico 2012, but you're going to need a new one at some point, most likely, if it's starting to give you bad readings. So you've looked for vacuum, you've checked your sensors, you've checked your mass airflow meter. Throttle position switch, it seems like such an easy one. It rarely fails. I've had them go twice on me. Once was the wiring into the connector, once was the actual switch. But, play games with that. If the car starts at 3/4 throttle or half throttle, but it won't start at idle or whatever, or if it'll run full throttle but not in other positions in the gas, maybe your switch is bad. Maybe it's affecting starting. If the car will run while on the gas, but it won't idle, check your idle control valve. It's like a little thing that basically just meters air past the throttle body to keep the car running at the right speed. But if the car doesn't start, man, it's generally going to be fuel. Get your fuel pump working. Then go to spark. Make sure you're actually producing a spark at the spark plug. If you're not, go through your ignition system. What times it? Do you have a distributor? Check your distributor. Like, are they burned out points? Like, can you see where it's worn out and maybe it's not jumping the gap? If you got a modern car, go to your sensors. Check your sensors. Make sure they're connected in right and feeding in right. But yeah, if you get to spark and you're hitting the spark plug and it's triggering, but you're still not lighting stuff on fire, yeah, you probably have like a pretty serious mixture issue. Because think about it, right? You're putting fuel into the engine, you're lighting it on fire. You're either lighting it at the wrong time, or what the mixture you're putting in there isn't mixed properly to light. It's too much gas or it's too little gas and it's not igniting. The thing is, when that happens, you'll usually get something. The motor will sputter, it'll cough, it'll crank, fire, and then, backfire. Or you'll get a combustion sound. If you're not getting a combustion sound, you got problems. It's probably fuel. Fix your fuel. Then you'll probably get combustion sounds. If you're getting it to fire here and there, start to look at when it is actually firing. Does it fire when you're at full throttle? Does it fire when you're just like off the gas cranking? It's very possible that if you crank at full throttle and the car actually fires, well, basically what it's saying is the motor's going to take all the fuel it can get, or all the air it can get. I'm at full throttle, the motor's going to take all the air it can get, dump the right amount of fuel for maximum air intake. If you've got a vacuum leak, it doesn't care because the computer already knows how much air is being pumped in. So if you fire under those scenarios, odds are you've got a massive vacuum leak or something's wrong with your metering, right? So look, you guys are gonna have to experiment with this. If you're in an event and you see a friend's car broken, go play with it, go learn, watch what the guy who's smart at the car is doing. Like, figure out how they make it run. But I can tell you that if you're building your own cars, even if you're not building your own cars, even if you got a great job and you're making cash and some shop preps your car and then you tow it to the track, dude, you don't want to go home. You don't want to miss a day of racing or a day of track time. Like, you should learn how to fix your own car, or at least troubleshoot it to the point where you can go get help. And when the guy comes over, you can say, okay, I've been through my fuses, I've checked my relays, I've got power to my fuel pump, I'm producing fuel pressure, I've got an issue with spark, I've checked my grounds, we're good there, I've checked my sensors, they look good, I've got no way to test them. My mass airflow looks dirty, do you have something I can clean it with? Do you have mass airflow cleaner? You walk up to someone's pit and talk like that, they're all gonna get up and come help you because clearly you've been doing it on your own and have tried. So yeah, knowledge is power. Yep, and experiment with it, have fun, but learn how the system works a little bit. Learn how an engine works, learn how the air pump works, learn why it's air, fuel, spark, and why they're so critical and how they relate to each other so that as you have problems, you can think about the system and say, all right, here's how the system works. My problem appears to be affecting this part of the system. Well, this part of the system is governed by these sensors and is affected by these changes, such as too much gas, too much air, not enough air. So, God, guys, I hope that made sense. I hope this is the beginning of you guys getting into how engines work. I hope this is the start of you guys like learning to work on cars and fixing your cars at events so you can keep racing. And yeah, I hope these are fun, man. All right, got to head now to Colorado, pick up the RV, and then to San Diego to prep for Baja. So see you guys soon. Oh, and a little plug for Western Maine Jeepers Association, right? Club my dad goes jeeping with. So, yeah, guys, here's to Maine. Here's to morning coffee. See you guys soon.